Hey, sixth graders, welcome to another video. Mr. Ronan here again. This video will cover chromosomes and the two different types of reproduction that we talked about in class. I'm going to try and make this as short as possible and make it as clear and simple for you guys as I can to help you guys get ready for the test tomorrow, because expect these things to be on there. So let's get going. So first off, let's talk about what a chromosome is. And if you remember back to our unit on cells, one of the organelles within a cell, or one of the little parts inside of a cell, is called the nucleus. And what the nucleus does, here's our nucleus right here. The nucleus contains important genetic information, and that genetic information is coiled together inside something that's called a chromosome. And here's a picture of a chromosome. If you follow my mouse right here, we have a chromosome. And what a chromosome is it's a bunch of DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a bunch of DNA that's coiled together, wrapped together to form what's called a string of, or a chromosome. Inside that DNA, we're going to have genes. So you see these little, this red color right here, this yellow color here, that blue right there. That codes for a different gene. Okay, so genes come together and they form what's called DNA, and DNA comes together to form what's called a chromosome, and that's all inside of the nucleus. Okay, and chromosomes are inside most cells, so we can go ahead and say red blood cells, for example, they do not have DNA, so they're not going to have any chromosomes, for example, but they are inside most cells, like skin cells, bone cells, brain cells, things like that. Those will all contain chromosomes. So now let's talk about sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is when a male's sperm cell, so here's a picture right here of what a sperm cell would look like under a microscope. When a male's sperm cell joins a female's egg, so the egg is the female's reproductive cell, the sperm is the male's reproductive cell, and when these two join together, so this sperm cell, you see that little tail right there, that's called a flagellum. That little tail is going to propel this sperm cell to move and join up with an egg cell. And once that sperm cell joins up with that egg cell, they unite and they become what's called the zygote. And the zygote would be it's a unicellular organism, okay, because it's just one cell at this time, okay, and this is how every human started off. We started off as a single cell called a zygote. And if we look at this sperm cell right here, this sperm cell is going to contain 23 chromosomes, okay? Within that sperm cell, there'd be 23 chromosomes. Within this egg cell, we're going to have 23 chromosomes as well. And once these two cells join together to meet to form a zygote, we're going to put the 23 chromosomes from the sperm cell and the 23 chromosomes from the egg cell, and we add those together, we get 46. And that's an explanation about why each cell in the human body, most cells in the human body, should contain 46 chromosomes. If they have less chromosomes or more chromosomes than 46, that can cause a genetic disorder. One of those would be Down syndrome, which is when a person has 47 chromosomes. It's a copy of the 21st chromosome, or an extra copy of the 21st chromosome. So a person's going to end up having 47 chromosomes instead of 46, and that'll cause some issues down the line. It's called the genetic disorder, or a chromosomal disorder. Okay, and since this zygote right here is going to get genetic information from both a male and a female, there's going to be what's called variation of traits, and that means that this offspring isn't going to look identical to just one of the parents. Its genetic information is going to be represented by both parents, since two organisms were involved in this type of reproduction. Okay, so it's going to have some similarities to the mom, and it's going to have some similarities to the dad, but it's never going to have identical genetic information to just one of the two parents. Okay, because two organisms are involved here. All right, let's talk about asexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction requires two parents where asexual reproduction requires a parent, just one parent, okay? And since only one parent is involved with this type of reproduction, the offspring or the life that's formed from this type of reproduction it's going to be identical to its parent, okay? Because it's not sharing DNA with another organism. It's just passing down its own genetic information, okay? And an example of this, the two examples we're going to talk about in this video would be binary fission and fragmentation. So binary fission occurs when a prokaryotic, remember, a prokaryotic cell is a cell that has no nucleus, okay, pro and no. So a cell that has no nucleus, and it also has to be unicellular, okay? So it's only organisms that are made of one cell, a single cell, can take part in binary fission. So humans, for example, we're made of multiple cells, so we cannot take part in binary fission, okay? Because we're multicellular organisms. We're made of multiple cells, and the cells in our body are also eukaryotic, okay? They have a nucleus. So an example of something that would take part in binary fission would be bacteria cells, could be amoebas. We talked about those in class because those are prokaryotic cells and they're unicellular as well. And so a prokaryotic unicellular organism reproduces asexually, meaning it does not have a partner. Okay, it just requires itself. And this reproduces asexually by dividing into two separate parts. So if we look at this diagram right here, we're starting off with one bacteria right here. One bacteria. And if we go down to the next step, we'll see that the chromosomes and the genetic information, it looks like there's more. If we look at this second picture, there isn't more. What happened is that this bacteria made a copy of all the genetic information. Okay, so now if we were to look at this this diagram right here, this picture, it made a copy of all of the genetic information from up here. Okay, and what's going to happen is those chromosomes are going to split into two sides. So over here we have the chromosomes, the genetic information on this side, and we have the exact same genetic information on this side. Okay, so when this eventually splits into two cells, they both of these cells, both of these bacteria, they both have the exact same genetic information. Okay, so that's why this cell right here is going to be identical to this, the parent cell, and they're basically going to be twins because they have the exact same genetic information. And again, this can happen with amoebas or any prokaryotic unicellular organism can take part in this. The other type of asexual reproduction we're going to talk about is fragmentation. And this occurs when we cut an organism. So I'm not sure why I said two organisms here. Let's pretend that that's not there. It occurs when an organism is split up into separate parts or fragments. So let's look at this picture right here. This is a picture of a flatworm. And what's going to happen here is, and we watched a video about this in class, but let's take a look. If we were to cut this flatworm right here into three separate parts, so we have a head, a midsection, and the tail, what's going to happen is that head is going to form a brand new body. This midsection, it's going to form a brand new body. This tail, it's going to form a brand new body. So if we cut this flatworm into three separate parts, it's going to form three brand new worms. And again, the genetic information is going to be identical because this flatworm is not sharing genetic information with another. It is just passing down its own genetic information, or DNA. Okay, and that's fragmentation, when we cut an organism into separate fragments, and those fragments form brand new organisms with identical DNA. And we talked about another example would be a starfish. If we take a starfish, we cut its arm off, that starfish will eventually grow a brand new arm, but that arm that was cut off is going to form a brand new starfish. Okay, so if we were to separate starfish into two separate parts, those two separate parts would form two separate but identical starfish. Okay, so I tried to make that as quick and painless as possible for you guys. We've talked about all this in class, but this is just a general review. All this should be in your notes, and if you have any questions, let me know in class. All right, thanks for watching.